Thanks, Amelia. So what I'm going to discuss is some supporting literature involving using self-monitoring as an intervention for individuals on the spectrum. So when we first started researching this topic, we agreed as a group that looking into literature reviews may be really beneficial before further exploring. One of the first ones that we came across that we were super interested in was conducted in 2015 by Abergel, Sinek, Wominski, Peterson, Ryder, and Aker. They looked at 54 studies in total that all involved using self-monitoring as an intervention for individuals with autism. The researchers rated each article by a set of criterion, which included how many participants there were, participants' ages, self-monitoring procedures, location of where they were conducted, if there's any social validity involved at all, and overall if the interventions were effective. An IOA was conducted to ensure that each researcher was scoring these studies in a similar manner. Surprisingly, the results of the literature review suggested that most interventions involving self-monitoring are used for individuals ranging from 9 to 14. There's only a handful of studies that they found that involved using this as an intervention for adults with autism. The majority of these studies were conducted in a more naturalistic setting, and of those studies that were conducted in a naturalistic setting, 70% of them showed them to be effective for the participants involved in that study. We really did find it interesting that as a group, most of these interventions tend to target older children than adolescent children, but then it drops off to adult. So we also found it really interesting what our results would be when we replicated the study and reviewed our results. But overall, the results were exciting, as that does show that there is a lot of support for self-monitoring being a good intervention for individuals on the spectrum. When shifting gears, one study stood out to me a lot, and that was conducted by Cole and Coyle in 2004. It was a study that involved using self-modeling and self-monitoring as an intervention. The study involved 3 participants. They were all boys that were diagnosed with autism, and their ages ranged from 9 to 11. Similarly to the study that we replicated, they had a set of expectations that they needed to follow in order for an interval to be successful. Some of these included that they needed to stay in their seat when they were working. They had to look focused on their work and be engaged in what they were asked to do. And they had to refrain from touching anything from non-work materials. We'll discuss this later on, but one of our requirements in the study was that we were considered off task if we were looking at our phones to do anything but change the timer for our intervals. Prior to the intervention, the participants went through training sessions in which they were shown a video of themselves engaging in target behavior, so they knew what was expected of them. I really do think that idea is interesting, especially when working with children. It helps give them a clear expectation of what's required of them and expected of them. Similarly to the study that we replicated, they also did their data in intervals. But the only difference is that the boys had to track whether they were off task versus we tracked if we were on task. Every 30 seconds, they marked on a self-monitoring sheet whether they were engaging in off-task behavior or not. These intervals continued for a solid 5 minutes, and then they received a 5-minute break. Through the results, it was shown that all 3 participants' off-task behavior significantly decreased from the baseline data. During a follow-up visit, each participant was still able to show a decrease in off-task behavior using self-monitoring. The reason why the study stood out so much to me is the application was almost similar to what we were doing for our replication. as a strong example of how self-monitoring can be used as an intervention for individuals on the spectrum. Now we're going to shift gears over to Brittany, who's going to continue to talk about this.